I'm not a career politician, and I've never sought to be one. I've always been driven by a vision to, in fact, build a united, prosperous, and reconciled South Africa, where all citizens have a fair shot in life, where the color of your skin does not determine your future prospects. In order to do so, it was always crucial that the DA evolved and transformed into a party for all South Africans can call home. A truly South African party at the center of politics. I've relentlessly sought to grow the party to all South Africans, and more specifically, black South Africans. If you're going to be a party of national government, you need to challenge and grow amongst all citizens. I indeed fundamentally believed that if the DA was to become a party of government, it needed to look, it needed to feel, and it needed to be a home and a place that would belong to all South Africans. And it's no secret that, in fact, the DA in its own history has been seen as a party for minorities. That the majority of South Africans, mainly black South Africans, did not relate to the DA and by extension struggled to trust the DA. This was not the fault of one person, it's the history, it's the context of our politics, it's the context of our nation. And equally so, rather a consequence of the historic journey of the DA and its predecessor parties. However, this needed to change and it required deliberate action. We began to campaign in many communities, specifically in black communities, to spearhead growth. And I truly enjoyed being a part of that journey and leading that charge. We changed the internal focus of the organization towards grassroots activism and engaged ourselves in communities and established branches in a new terrain. Activists came on board. They were inspired. We were having manifesto launches in stadia, and I'll never forget that actually for many South Africans, they felt a sense of ownership and a sense of momentum. So in 2016, I think it was a momentous occasion. We, together with so many, made history. And the DA, in fact, removed the ANC from government from the country's largest cities. We formed coalition governments in Joburg, in Tshwane, in Nelson Mandela Bay. We worked hard to restore, in fact, the dignity of the poor, to fight like anything to be able to give South Africans who are unemployed a sense of hope through an intense focus on job creation and service delivery. I think for South Africa, this was a watershed moment, and certainly it was for the party. We more than doubled our governance footprint from 6.5 million citizens to almost 16 million South Africans. We're now living under DA-led governments. Forming these DA governments obviously was crucial to our project and a vital step towards building that trust with South Africans who were, by and large, skeptical of the DA. I maintain it was the correct decision to form those governments. I've never been more proud of the fact that the city I grew up in under apartheid became a city that now was governed by a DA in a new South African party. We worked hard to make sure that ultimately we could see people for that first and foremost they were South Africans. And I'm grateful for the work that so many worked tirelessly, so many activists, so many South Africans to bring about change in those cities. Despite complex and intricate coalition arrangements. Since its formation, the DA has been seen, perhaps maybe by others, as a regional party, with its political power base and administration and organizational headquarters situated in Cape Town. I argued and still maintain that it's right that the DA needed to move up to here, Mojozi. For if the DA was to challenge for power, it needed to grow outside the Western Cape and establish a political, organizational, and administrative footprint in the country's economic hub. It's why today we are here in this place, Konkulego House, Freedom House, the party's head office, which is now in Joburg. During the party's 28th Federal Congress, I sponsored what has now come to be known as the Diversity Clause, which cemented diversity as one of the DA's core values. This is truly a very important step in leading the organization towards more inclusivity, demonstrating that the DA will never be a party for one race. The struggle in this country has never been for the removal of a race. It was always the removal of a system. And ultimately that black people, white people, Indian people, colored people could work together in a movement to build a South Africa for all. And you know, even in our own organization, the diversity clause itself sought to say we must remove the obstacles of any exclusion to build greater diversity, to expand opportunities, particularly for young black candidates and activists within the party. In doing so, we were always clear of this one simple fact, that the emancipation of black South Africans is not the enslavement of white South Africans. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not an either-or. It's that together we can indeed build a South Africa for all. In internal elections and in our list processes, I in fact advocated for more South Africans, particularly black South Africans, more women, for greater and cultural diversity. Again, I did so not by picking one race over another, but that ultimately we add to the journey towards a diverse party. This is also about the consideration for geography, making sure we could spread our footprint in communities that we were never there before. Make no mistake, along the journey, we've made some tough decisions. We've fought many battles. And I want to say I fought many battles even with Helen Ziller, who's here. Especially around her comments and all of that. But it never deterred away from the respect we shared. And even around her comments around colonialism, we certainly maintained the respect. I maintain that these sentiments certainly did not help build trust between black and white South Africans. And I think they made harder the project, but certainly a project we needed to be engaged in. Because building trust in an organization, especially with voters, does take time. Yet, despite these challenges along the way, we are making great progress and will continue to do so. However, over the past few months, it's become more and more clear to me that there does exist a few within the DA who do not see eye to eye with me. I don't share the vision for the party and the direction it was taking. There have been several months of consistent and a coordinated attack on me and my leadership to ensure that this project failed or I failed. In fact, this extended to a campaign that was run on the front pages of the Afrikaans weekly paper in an attempt to undermine my name and my integrity. This cowardly behavior has put my wife and our kids in great danger as I watched, often in disgust, of the pictures of our home being published in our media and the dangers that went with that. Noma kunzi, noma kuyenyuka. Fellow South Africans, At the end of the day, the DA has always been but a vehicle to pursue and further the vision. I'm still committed to this vision, to inspire hope amongst the millions of South Africans, to seek justice for the wrongs of the past, to restore dignity to the millions, to heal our nation, to break down the barriers of entry into our economy, and to create work and meaningful opportunity, especially for young people. And ultimately, to remove the ANC out of government. This is always in pursuit of that dream of building one united, prosperous, and reconciled South Africa for all. There does come a time when leaders must step back from all noise and conjecture and make a sober and honest assessment as to what the future indeed does hold. And I've spent the last few days doing exactly that alongside with my wife. And in the end, we've come to the conclusion that despite my best efforts, perhaps the DA is not the best vehicle which is suited to take forward the vision of building one South Africa. And therefore, it is with great sadness that in order to continue this fight for the vision I strongly believe and the country I so dearly love, I will today step down as leader of the DA. I'll continue my role as parliamentary leader if the party makes that decision until the end of the year. After which I strongly believe the party must in fact go to Congress in order to elect new leadership. I want to say to every South African that I've engaged with on the road, I've spoken to so many people. I will see you. I'll see you in your communities. I'll see you in your homes, for the struggle continues. I want to thank all the activists that I've worked with. So many people who have been so proud, who have put on DA shirts and even in the face of danger, campaigned for the organization. I want to thank every public representative, members of parliament, members of provincial legislatures, councillors. And I especially want to thank the staff members of the DA. You guys gave your all. You worked tirelessly despite what was happening. In particular, I've worked with so many, the different CEOs, strategists that I've worked with. But also in particular, I'd like to thank every provincial leader I have worked with over the past 4 years. Ke lebogela support ya lona and ndiabulela enkosi. I want to thank James Self, who I know is not here. James worked hard as the Federal Council Chair, and we served together throughout this time. I want to wish the DA success in future, and I also want to say to the new Federal Council Chair, Helen, I want to wish you the best in going forward as Federal Council Chair. I also want to thank my friend and colleague, someone I've worked with, Ethel Trollope, who is here with me today. Ethel and I got elected at the same Congress in 2015. We served together, and we'll continue our long friendship and our ability that we've always been able to share many moments together. In closing, my family has taken a lot of stress. I want to thank my wife, I want to thank my kids, I want to thank my parents, who, for them, have always inspired hope. That even though they suffered so immensely under apartheid, they never taught us racism. They allowed us to build a mixed marriage. And we're proud of that. They paid the price for me to get my education, and they lived with a dream that said that one day our child can lead in any context. So, Mama ndiabulela, ko papa ka ke a leboga. And to my wife, Natalie, she's been an incredible pillar of strength. Regardless of how tricky and how difficult it may be, she has been that. Our commitment to this country is that we will continue to fight. We are not stepping away from politics. We will continue to save our nation, to serve our nation, and we will continue with a vision for one South Africa, South Africa for all. And so long as I have lungs, I have air in my lungs, that dream, that fight must continue, and the fight must carry on. Ke a leboga, ke a bulela, enkosi. God bless South Africa. Morena boloka setjhaba sa heso.
Good afternoon, members of the media, South Africans, Democratic Alliance colleagues, members of Parliament, members of the legislature, councillors, our members, our activists, and our voters. I want to say that my decision today is not an easy decision. It has been taken after some considerable soul-searching and some reflection, and it's a sad day. For me, it has been an extraordinary privilege to serve this party in a number of capacities over the best part of my life. And I've been a public representative for a quarter of a century, and I've supported this party and its two predecessor parties for 1.5 decades before we formed the Democratic Alliance. So there have been some incredible highs and very few lows. When we formed the Democratic Alliance, it was a traumatic time for our party, but we took a decision to put the interests of South Africa first and to build a party for all South Africans. I had personal misgivings about it, but when the decision was made, I threw myself into that decision, and we saw incredible results. I had a number of highlights during that period. One of them being the leader of the opposition in Parliament. The other was being elected as the national chairman of the Democratic Alliance in 2015 when Mmusi Maimane was elected. And I'll never forget that at that Congress, a young, very talented, inspirational man inspired me when he said, "The Democratic Alliance is not a home for racists." He said that at his first press conference after being elected as the leader, and I was deeply inspired by that. Subsequent to that, probably the highlight of my political career was being elected as the mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay. Even the name of that municipality was not lost on me. In fact, it was a profound challenge and a great opportunity that I relished. And I relished most the fact that in the 2 years that I was the mayor, I was able to implement Democratic Alliance policies that showed a marked difference in that city and the lives of the people of Nelson Mandela Bay. A low light in that regard was when one political party in this country threatened us and tried to blackmail us as a Democratic Alliance, that if we didn't support them on the issue around expropriation without compensation, that they would cut the throat of whiteness. And it was my throat that was cut by the EFF and one of our coalition partners. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that they managed to convince one of our own to abstain from that voting, and the rest is history. And the slide in that city under the current coalition of corruption has been marked and depressing. 2016 was an incredible year for the Democratic Alliance. We met all the objectives that we set ourselves: to govern the city of Cape Town with an increased majority, to govern Nelson Mandela Bay, Johannesburg, and Tshwane. Historic election. We confounded you and the nation and all the gainsayers and certainly our opponents. So we have achieved incredibly much in this party. But this year, 2019 in May, we had a less than acceptable election. We had set ourselves lofty targets. We didn't reach those targets. In fact, we went backwards. And you'll remember at the press conference when the results were known, I said that we take collective responsibility. This confused some people because in the Democratic Alliance we're supposed to be a party of individuals. We most certainly do respect and protect the rights of individuals. But you can't be a team of individuals. And we were a magnificent team of people. We had 9 premier candidates across the country, and we had a team, One South Africa, of which I was part, and we did not achieve our objectives. We then set about a review process that I'm very proud that Mmusi initiated, because it shows that he was prepared to hold a mirror up to himself and to the party. And I have great respect for the people who served on that review panel, and I want to share with you that the presentation that I made to that review panel was one of the most difficult and traumatic I'd had in my life. In fact, I likened it to going for marriage guidance counseling when your relationship is breaking down. It's a very tough time. But it is important that one does that. And we have done that. And I want to thank that panel for the way they handled the presentation of that review report on Saturday at our Federal Council. Everybody expected that the DA would tear itself apart. They didn't tear it. We didn't tear ourselves apart. In fact, we walked out of there united, and we accepted that we had to do things better and differently. We made mistakes. We confused our voters. We prevaricated on important issues, and there was too much equivocation. So that report came up with some findings about the leadership of this party. 2 of our colleagues have gone already, Paul Bowie, the CEO, and James Self. And I also want to pay tribute to James Self. He was the epitome of selfless loyalty to this party. The review panel had some very specific recommendations about Mmusi, and I think they were unfair, and they were an overreach of their responsibility. But be that as it may, my name was not mentioned in the leadership deficit in the party. But when I say we take collective responsibility, I must take responsibility, having been the chairman of this party for 4 years, that the less than spectacular election result must be part of my responsibility. So I accept that when the buck stops at the leadership door, I was in one of those doors. And as the chairman of this party, I think it's fitting that I also take responsibility. We had a long discussion today in our federal executive, and I want to thank the members and my colleagues of federal executive for the manner in which that discussion took place. I know it frustrated you and you waited a long time. But anything that's worthwhile is worth waiting for. And I fully believe that the Democratic Alliance is worthwhile, and that's why I've given so much to this party. But I also famously or infamously recently said that there's a time to come and a time to go in politics. And I realized that this weekend that it was probably my time to go. And I'm happy to accept that. I'm happy to move on and try and build or rebuild my life. Not easy for somebody with my complexion at my age and my hairstyle. But I'm prepared to do that. What I'm also not going to do is I'm not going to slag off my political party. I joined this party voluntarily years ago. I've served it selflessly because I believe in it. And I know that new leadership will emerge in the Democratic Alliance and that leadership will take us forward. And I believe that they must take us forward. Why? Because the ANC has neglected South Africans. The excesses of the ANC confound us on a daily basis. If you don't know what I'm talking about, consider the interview with Baleka Mbete on Al Jazeera, and you will see a party that is in complete denial. The Democratic Alliance is not a party in denial. The Democratic Alliance realizes that we have made mistakes. We have taken things for granted. We have taken voters for granted. And I know that we will learn from those lessons. And I wish my colleagues that have the responsibility to take this party forward and to protect the interests of all South Africans, to make sure that we have an effective opposition. We were the best opposition prior to 1994. After 1994, we were undoubtedly the best opposition in this country. And after 2000, when we formed the Democratic Alliance and slowly started taking over government across this, first the Western Cape and latterly across the country, we have shown that where the DA governs, it governs well. And South Africans deserve good governance. And I know that the DA can govern well and that the DA will continue to govern well. I wish everybody in the Democratic Alliance, and especially the voters, all the very best. Don't turn your backs on the only political party that can save South Africa. The parties on the fringe of this political spectrum in our country do not offer a prosperous future for all South Africans. Only the Democratic Alliance offers that, and I wish them well. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, there'll be a response from the party's Federal Council, Chairperson, and I repeat, there won't be questions afterwards. Helen?
Thank you very much, Solly, Mmusi, Athol, members of the media, colleagues. What happened today came as a shock to members of the Federal Executive that met today to implement or discuss the implementation of the resolutions of the Federal Council taken at the weekend. And there were 13 resolutions of the Federal Council, several of which require timelines and management and a lot of logistics and organization to accomplish. But obviously a great deal of the meeting was spent discussing what you've heard here today from Mmusi and Athol. We didn't take a vote, but I think it was a unanimous reflection of the view of the Federal Executive that we would have far preferred Mmusi and Athol to have remained until the choice was made by delegates at a federal Congress. The two first resolutions that were adopted by the Federal Council at the weekend said, the Federal Council accepts the report of the Review Committee in principle and gives effect to recommendations in the following resolutions. Firstly, that a Federal Congress be convened as soon as constitutionally possible, bearing in mind the administrative processes which should be concluded as quickly as possible to give effect to recommendations of the review process. And that is what the vast majority, if not all, of the members of the Federal Executive would have preferred. That would have meant getting down to organizing an early Congress for which we had a timeline on the logistics required, which would have enabled us to have a Congress in April. And then allow the Congress to make the critical decisions, especially about leadership, which is the most important decision that a Congress makes. Nevertheless, Mmusi and Athol, after an adjournment and considering the requests, came to a conclusion that only they can reach as individual human beings after speaking to their families. And so it was with much sadness that the Federal Executive understood and ceased arguing for the compliance with the resolution of the Federal Council, but accepted that they'd taken a decision because, as they see it, their positions have become untenable. We now have a challenging road ahead, but I, as Chair of the Federal Council and also Chair of the Federal Executive, want to pay a tribute to both Mmusi and Athol. Everybody knows the history of my intensive support for Mmusi. And as he says, we have disagreed at times. But I don't think there's any individual in a political party that doesn't disagree with someone at one time or another, because we're a democratic organization and we have debates on policy issues and other issues. It has never diminished my respect for him and our capacity to discuss issues and to be cordial with each other. And I have equal respect for his wife, Natalie, for their children, and believe me, I know what kind of trauma they've been through. Politics is a very, very difficult space. As for Athol, I've lost count of the number of years that I have worked with him. Far, far longer than most other people in the party. We've been colleagues, working shoulder to shoulder. We've been competitors in toughly fought contests. We've devoted the whole of our adult lives. I'm slightly older than Athol, even despite his hairstyle. We have worked our entire adult lives for democracy in this country. And Mmusi remains very young and has a long and illustrious career ahead of him, working for democracy and inclusion and One South Africa for all, which remains all of our absolute commitment. We don't differ on that. We don't waver on that. We are all equally committed to that. But it is an enormously difficult path, and in fact, very few countries have achieved it. So I just want to say on behalf of the Federal Executive, salute and respect. And part of that salute and respect is to respect your decision. And I hope that our friendship and our debates and our disagreements will continue in good faith and in mutual love of our country and vision for the future, as they always have been. People will want to know where we go from here. Our Constitution makes provision for the fact that if a leader departs in unforeseen circumstances, the party chairperson takes over until a new leader can be elected. This is a rather unusual situation because both the leader and the chairperson have taken individual decisions at the same time. So before we rush into something that may not be constitutional and may not be appropriate, we are taking legal advice as to what the right path forward is constitutionally. And tomorrow we will convene a Federal Executive by teleconference to discuss that legal advice and to chart the way forward. I'm deeply moved by the commitment that both Mmusi and Athol have shown to the values and the vision that we all share that are set out in the first chapter of our Constitution, to which Mmusi, Athol, and I have all, in different ways, made a major contribution. And I know that till our dying day, we will work together for one South Africa for all, in a country where the economy can grow and where everybody can be included on the path to prosperity. And the Federal Executive, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of the Federal Council, although I haven't consulted them, says thank you very, very much to both Mmusi and Athol for their contribution, and long may our cooperation and work and your participation in it continue. Thank you.